Oh, 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 all the buttons work today. They work today. Tahisha, how are you doing?
I am.
No, I'm not asking you how you're. I'm just saying,
I
hey.
am fantastic on a Friday. Is that what you want to hear?
That's what I want to hear. We got the band back together. Hey, my name is Dr. Harry Pettaway, also known as Dr. Harry, the Equity Coach, Executive Director of Equity Communities of Practice, and I am here with
Tahitia Timmons, coach, nurse, master's prepared. I'm not going to give receipts because I know I've received someplace else. Small business owner, of conscious by us, queer.
You're just going to go through all the receipts.
I'm just going to do it all.
You're going to go through all of them.
Just going to go through it all.
We hopefully, let's see. No one has joined us yet, but that's okay. We're gonna keep talking. We're gonna keep talking.
A Friday talking to you is lovely anyways.
It is.
I'm gonna learn something. I always learn something new from you.
You crack me up. I know your community is joining. Which is interesting because we do have different variations of how we see the world and how we see DEI, and I am definitely ready to catch the smoke. Is that what the youngsters say right now? Is that what the youngsters say about it?
There's an echo on my microphone. Someone just told me so. This is what I told Harry earlier, but he didn't listen to me.
I didn't hear the echo.
Uh-oh. All right. I'm gonna... Let me close this. Is that better? Marcus, can you hear me a little? Is it still ugly?
What platform is Marcus on?
LinkedIn.
How many are on LinkedIn right now?
I don't know if I can see that.
That's all right.
I closed it.
That's okay.
Ooh, sounds like reverb. I'm not singer in the family that was brother. Not better.
Are we gonna have to shut it down? So for everybody that's out there, what's interesting is that Tahisha and I have been fighting the urge to actually have this conversation that we're going to have today for the past couple hours as we've gone through our technical checks and balances. So we were not expecting this reverb issue. I actually can't hear you at all now. No, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Just like the commercial.
but I can't be in here, so let me figure out what I did.
It's
You know,
because
we ran. I just want you to know we did run through all of this earlier, trying to. Oh, now I hear.
the reverb is most likely coming from. Do you have LinkedIn on also?
I do not.
Um,
How about now?
I don't hear the reverb. I do hear you.
Let me see. Is that for people on LinkedIn?
Are you muted on LinkedIn? Meaning, like, is your browser?
No, I completely got out of LinkedIn.
Okay.
I believe. Unless I was looking for something else. There's always a possibility. But I don't think so. Yeah, so I'm just going to pull a different platform. And the other thing to do is completely get rid of that.
You know what they say because we didn't kick it off well in the first minute. Everybody is logging off.
You know, you're going to check with and they're probably see if I can fix this.
Dare I say you're not qualified?
Don't you say it.
Okay.
Say that again.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. All right.
Got
Look, you went old school in that, Tahitia. How are you arriving today? We have key text on this, so you can't just change it.
I'm not going to change it. I am still traumatized and hopeful.
Right on. You want to? All right. And just to give some background, through our coaching certifications, it was always a really cool exercise to start out the program or start out the event by talking about how you're arriving today. So we are going to ask if you are following along either live or you are part of the recording to let us know how you are arriving. I'm going to tell you how I am arriving as the stereotypical black man, which is funny to me. I am angry, but I am also inspired. So happy to be here. Happy to get the band back together. To Isha and I met, man, it's 4 years ago now, I think. Has it been that long or three or 4 years? We met working with the Institute for Diversity Certification, where we did a lot of work there, working with the certification program, getting our own certifications. Both of us are certified diversity professionals, certified diversity executives. We had other receipts before that. I like using the term receipts. But today we have some hot topics to discuss, so we appreciate everyone joining us. And if you wouldn't mind, in the comments, please, again, let us know how you are arriving today. And as we mentioned, we're talking about receipts, and I don't know why it's so important for Black people to always get an extra certification, get an extra degree, always have to prove who we are. But it seems that today in America, especially this week, this is where we're at. So you can see those on the ticker. But Tahisha, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So we had a conversation about this before this discussion about how imposter syndrome, which I think really ties into this concept of receipt, really is at play a lot of times with marginalized folks, Black people, women, queer people, but specifically, we're probably focused a little bit on race right now. and the conversation about race and why, in particular, Black women often have to be overqualified, have extra receipts whenever we weigh in on uh, a topic. I always felt like I had to provide, and this is why I should be speaking about this. And I'm not saying that that's not valid for everyone. Everyone should have expertise in what they're talking about, right? Versus just showing up and having strictly opinion. But I do feel that for certain groups, it's much more difficult to be taken seriously if you don't have a plethora of degrees, certifications, qualifications, even in conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that the take home is, and if people are following around and looking at the ticker, it's not as I have been told, self promotion. That's not it. It is just to share with whoever's watching today that the topics that we're going to talk about, we do have some credibility in that space. We've got some expertise in that space. We are by no means the end all be all. We have a specific worldview that's different amongst us. Let me so sorry, I'm getting a text that I'm always sounds like he might still be echoing, but we're gonna keep
I don't know why.
we're gonna
Okay, how about now? Yeah, it's pretty echoey is what I'm hearing.
I wonder if
Still echoing?
hold on.
I have everything shut off. And I don't, other than my camera. Still echo. And I apologize for this. We tried to troubleshoot this earlier, but okay. Harry, do you think it's the fact that I also am broadcasting this to my platforms? I can disconnect them. Now I can't hear you, Harry. Oh, it stopped. Is it echoing still as I'm talking right now? I'm okay now, Harry.
I think I may not have been
Oh my goodness.
the scandal.
The scandal of this is harmful.
The scandal the scandal on that. Who do we lose? It's my fault. It's
Okay.
my
You
fault.
know what?
All right, we'll keep going.
Black women came prepared, and you did not, Harry. And
Let's
I
see.
told
So
you.
it sounds like you're not echoing.
Uh,
Let's see if people can hear me. The
No,
echo is
much better now.
gone. The
The
echo
echo
is gone.
gone.
Okay, so we'll move around. We may have to change some audio settings to play some of the videos that we have. But we appreciate everybody's patience. It's an awkward time to ask you to show us some love for the algorithms, but please do. Please in the comments. I feel like saying like and subscribe, but that we're not on that platform, so we're not going to do that. Hey, let's talk about the term woke because it's in the title of what we are talking about today, and I think it's important for us to give you a real definition of woke, and so we're going to go with the Merriam-Webster's dictionary quote, which is woke, aware and actively attentive to important societal issues, societal facts and issues. And then we add, especially issues of racial and social justice. It is a very loaded term with a lot of things that are tied to black terminology, then linked to DEI terminology, kind of weaponized to say, the woke this, woke that, depending on who you're listening to. For me, it's been an interesting uh, experience, especially considering. Um, Again, this isn't a political post, or this isn't a political
And Harry, I'm laughing
show.
because when we started talking about this, you said, I don't want to talk about politics, and I think it's really hard. And you know how I feel about that. I think it's hard to talk about the term woke without bringing in the context of politics into it, because I think the issue is it's been politicized, and it has always been kind of politicized when you talk about concepts like woke. Um, but like Harry said in the beginning, he and I have very different perspectives and come from these concepts from very different areas sometimes. And so this is where you and I tend to disagree.
So let's talk about the woke part of the woke discussion, right? The anti woke wokeness of woke, and I said woke a bunch of times, but that's where we are today. I was watching a convention from one of the two major political parties um, the other week, a couple weeks ago, and they kept talking about, you know, the woke this, the woke that. There's woke in the military. There's all these bad things. What's been interesting for me is if you actually look at the core of the definition, like aware and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, it's the idea of there's a certain group of people, there's a certain base, right? There's a certain base that believes a certain way, and this group needs to cater their message to them, right? Meaning that someone saying we don't like what's going on in our schools, we don't like this, what's going on here, we don't like hearing about DEI or anything like that. Even be aware of that technically is woke. That's why I'm saying like it's a play on words. I don't like it. I don't like when it's being weaponized. I will say stay woke. Um, for those of you that agree.
And to that, I say, when we talk about weaponization of the term woke, we're really talking about, and I'm going to pull it right out, the very far right side of, and I'm going to say the party, the
Mm,
Republican
mm,
Party.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I'm sure I will get canceled for that in some way or shape or form. But the truth is, when you look at strategists for the Republican Party who have talked about, well, what is woke, or how do we view woke, and how they're rebuking this idea that woke also is talking about systemic racism in the United States. And what does that mean? And calling attention to that there are systems in place that keep certain groups from accessing certain services and moving ahead. And that's part of that stay woke to what's going on in society at a system level, right? So when they say they're anti woke, the concept there leans towards, well, there isn't a system in place, and we're going to push that aside because America, quote, isn't racist. And I would go further and say America is racist and sexist and genderist and all of the isms, because America is made up of a collection of people with varying thoughts. And in that group, you're going to have people who are going to be very different from you and have different opinions and different thoughts about how they got ahead and what systems were in place and what systems were not in place to support them. And that is my thought on the woke
I feel like I
discussion.
should have had a disclaimer that said that Tahisha's comments are her own on that one, so that I don't get canceled with you because you said that America is racist. This is not what it's about today. However, I
He
will
says
say
that
that
as
as we
we have
move,
the
there are
flag up
things.
there.
Yeah,
You
there are
say that
there
as
are
we have the flag up there.
yeah there are some things about race that we're gonna get to in just a minute. So I appreciate that dialogue around it. So the buzz right now, the part of why I'm angry has to do a bit with this idea of DEI hires, right? Um, Pretty interesting. We'll talk about whether that's a new thing. or an old thing, but just give me a second so I can switch the audio. So don't say anything because you will echo. But give me a second so I can change the setting. I muted myself, right, instead of switching the audio. Hold on one second.
I want to play what's been going on over on Capitol Hill. This is how they've been talking about the vice president.
100%. She was a DEI hire.
His words as being dumb as a rock. His words. He says she's dumb as a rock. Others are saying she was a diversity hire.
I hire a black female for vice president, and that he just skipped over. What about white females? What about any other group?
That's extremely offensive and dehumanizing. And let me tell you what it means when somebody calls a person like me or anybody else a DEI hire. What that means is if you are a woman of any background, if you are a person of color, and you achieved success, rose to a position of leadership, you didn't deserve it. You didn't get there on merit. You got there because you got some unfair advantage. That is incredibly insulting.
I mean, intellectually, just really kind of the bottom of the barrel. And from the standpoint of just who she is, I think she was a DEI hire, and I think that that's what we're seeing.
You start insulting black women, you're going to see something you haven't seen before.
So, Harry, I know that you and I.
So if you're interested, let me know in the chat. Send us a private message. That will be awesome. Hold on, we're almost back.
I hear you when you said what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is, so I know that this got you fired up this week. We had a conversation earlier about like just how the phrase DEI hire being bandied about was, it's a term meant to trigger. It's a term when used meant to be harmful by certain groups. And then really, what are we actually saying when we say DEI hire? And I feel it often has it often has a dependency on the context, the tone, and who is saying it. But the clip that you pulled, the one that kind of got me feeling a bit traumatized was there was something said by Sebastian Gorka, and I'm not going to play it because I don't want to have to ruin the audio that we have going on. But what he says in it is he says, and I'm just going to read what he says to Rob Schmidt, and it's in reference to what's going to happen with the election. Will donors pull out with Kamala Harris as the nominee? And he says, and I'm going to read directly from the audio. And so, in response to Rob Schmidt saying, these donors really think that Kamala Harris is going to be better in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania than Joe Biden would. I mean, that's the point because it can't be anybody else, right? And then Sebastian Gorka says to him, Rob, you're being logical. Stop it. All right. She's a DEI hire, right? She's a woman. She's colored, which gives me such pause. Therefore, she's got to be good, and at least her brain doesn't literally freeze in mid-sentence. So there's all kinds of jabs that are given there. But what stands out is that as a woman, And I'm assuming he's using a very ancient term for Black women, or perhaps he means to use colored, or person of color would be more, if he was choosing to be politically correct or in any way correct. He might have said person of color, but instead he says colored, which
Right.
means something totally different in my mind, and that she's a woman. So almost saying she's not qualified. And I think that is the thing that I felt traumatized when I started hearing DEI hire all of a sudden a lot more this week,
I love
which
how
on
you
top
gave
of other
him.
events that have happened this week felt very traumatizing.
I love how you gave him the benefit of the doubt. So even
Because
on
I said I
LinkedIn,
was hopeful.
I know, right? So you and I tend to stick to LinkedIn for certain topics, right? Some of that is because there's not as many trolls on this platform. Actually, for me, that is most of it. There's not as many trolls on LinkedIn. I know that we are broadcasting on. I'm not sure everywhere you're going, but I'm also on Facebook. But I wanted to show some of the posts that I found related to DEI hire this week because, you and I have reactions to it. We go into a certain level of anger or forgiveness or trying to understand, but it has been interesting to see how different people approach this. Now, one of the ones, it's kind of it's interesting to me because a lot of people that are tuning in right now are coming from the DEI space, right? And there's a certain type of view or worldview, and it's an important term that the great Leah Smiley has shared with us throughout our certification, that we all see the world through a certain lens, right? We all have a certain set of biases, no matter who you are. Bias isn't bad; we just all have them, and especially on LinkedIn, which has been interesting for me, is that our special interest really shine through because a lot of our posts are tied to our employment or um, written in a way that we won't get fired if we're in that kind of position, or to get more activity, get more followers, certain things like that. But people are kind of all over the place on DEI hire. Like we just had a comment in the chat, which is kind of where I fall in, just because of, using the term is bad. Now whether or not DEI hire is a thing, we can talk about that because we know some organizations do that,
Play
right?
play Uno
Yeah.
with their DE. They're like, I
DEI
need a
Uno.
red
I've
card, a
got
green
one.
card, a yellow
Yeah.
card, and a rainbow card,
There
right?
we go. There we
Um,
go. So let me just bring some highlights. So like the post in the middle is interesting because it gives that whole, like, from the DEI space we feel attacked. We need to explain what DEI means to people. And I'm gonna say that from what Tobias is saying, what they're saying here, yeah, that's true. I was more that in that space in 2020, 2021, and I kind of got to the point where it's like, how many different ways can you say bias, right? Like how many different ways can I tell you that this is the right thing to do? And just to give everybody my perspective on DEI is really it's advanced leadership skills. Like if you take the certification and really look at it, it's talking about how to lead people, not how to give anybody anything or make people, I don't want to say feel better. Like it's not that touchy feely piece that a lot of people talk about. At least for me, I'm not saying though your ability to belong and what your mental health is like throughout the day, and how you feel about who you are in the places that you work, live, pray, go to school, whatever. I'm not saying that that's not important, but in the context of the comments about Kamala Harris, that's not what's triggering me. And also she doesn't need my help. What I mean by that is Kamala Harris doesn't need Dr. Harry, the equity coach, right, to come in and defend her honor or anything like that. She's not cowering in a corner because somebody said something to her. So I'm kind of beyond, hey, let's explain what DEI means to the rest of the world so that people know what DEI hire is. Like that is not for me what we're talking about. But then there's this other group of people that feel that DEI is a compliment. Now, I'm not bashing this. So if you do think that DEI is a compliment, put it in the chat. It's okay. We'll talk about it. I get where people are coming from with this.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm going to interrupt you, Harry, because I don't even
go on.
I think there's a difference between acknowledging that there are DEI hires, which I think some of these posts talk about, and whether or not it is a slur when or I'm going to call it a slur, an aggression when you're called a DEI hire, because the truth um, is that many people have gotten their foot in the door because some company somewhere decided to be performative in their hiring process and do the DEI shuffle and decide to add you in. And then you probably didn't have the support systems you needed. And you probably didn't have what you needed to thrive and grow there, but you grew and you proved because you felt like you had to prove something because you are told, oh, you're the first person we've ever hired into. And I don't know how many times I've heard that from leaders. I was the first woman. I was the first Black person. I was the first this. And that came because they were doing the performative DEI shuffle. And you feel like, there's so much weight on your shoulders. So, yes, I'm completely going to acknowledge that there are DEI hires in the workplace because there are many organizations that see DEI as a very visual, as a very, I need to make this look. And I'm not going to say that this applies to the executive high leadership top level, but I want to make this look like we are so much more diverse, inclusive, and equitable in our hiring practices than we are. And I do think that there truly has or there was a push to kind of bring people in and to create diversity. But the issue comes in the fact that it was sheerly and strictly a performative effort. And the same thing applies to, and I know we talk about this a little bit later, but it's the same thing that comes up when you talk about affirmative action and affirmative action hires, right? And so, and you have it down there, is DEI hire a new spin on affirmative action hire? Because I've heard that in the past too. You're here because of affirmative action. So uh, I am going to be realistic in the fact that I do believe that without affirmative action, without the Equal Rights Act of, and nobody beat me off if I say the wrong year, 1964, EEOC, without DEI practitioners, CEOs, position holders, many of us would not have gotten in the door.
Yeah, and
Now I'm done.
one of the things that one of the things that you said, and I think we should have a follow up. Another event on this is the idea about DEI Uno, right? Um, we just we need to go get someone that looks different than us. That whole thing, and whether or not the organization was ready for that, and they gave them the skills to succeed or not, right? Were they prepared? How that makes it look for everyone else, and whose responsibility is that? The companies or the individual. But let's talk a little bit more about some of these other comments. So then it went to, which I found was interesting, people that are claiming, like, this is how I fit in for DEI. So the first, would you like to read the first one?
Um, so the first one talks about, I am a woman. I am a Hispanic woman. I am an Asian woman. I am an immigrant. I am not a DEI hire. And there's some more text there, but I actually don't know what the rest of it says. But I, I think this is interesting how people are talking this whole slide about how they're talking about how, I might not. Ooh, my screen just went black. Okay. How, they're proud of being a DEI hire in the third one, right? Proud DEI hire here. Um, and it's in quotes. So I do want to preface that it's in quotes. Um, but, and I think there's a comment, and Melania puts a comment here in the space that says, even if you are a DEI quote hire, it doesn't mean you're not highly qualified. And so I think that's part of the pushback too, is that DEI hire has come to mean you don't merit being there, and that perhaps without that door being opened, you're not qualified to be there. When the opposite is true, you needed to have the door opened by DEI, affirmative action, EEOC, to get organizations to let you in. And then on top of that, you had to be overly qualified, which is my angst with this whole thing. It's not like you're comparing apples to apples in some situations. And I can only speak for myself when I say I know early on in my career, I was held to the standard, well, you have to be done with your advanced degree in order to hold education position at an organization. Whereas I knew of some uh, white identifying people who were working on completing a master's. So before I could even get my foot in the door, I was told, well, you're not qualified unless you have that degree, or you have these certifications, or you can't apply here unless you have it. Where I watched and looked around and saw, hey, there's people here that don't have this and weren't held to the same standard. So I think that is where it becomes very apparent that that in some situations you're overqualified. When you look around and you see people who, don't hold the same qualifications you have. And then
Yeah,
you think, well, what's different about me that I needed to have it? Um, and Harry, I have so much intersectional difference that I probably was like, is it because I'm black? Is it because I'm queer and openly queer? Like, who knows? Um,
it's interesting because I started out with I'm angry, and DEI didn't start with George Floyd, um, and this idea didn't start with and I started thinking about, like, okay, man, DEI hire, so like, what does that mean? And it made me angry because, especially for black women, and my pronouns are there. I am not a black woman. Um, but I do feel a certain type of way when black women get attacked, and women and anyone gets attacked about their qualifications. And we shared our receipts earlier. What I feel is that even before this resurgence of what is DEI and things like that, is that if you were, especially a black woman in the workplace, you had to be overqualified. I mean, if you were going up again, and if you look at some of the comments on the screen, anybody other than a white Christian man, um, I'm paraphrasing all the other comments that I've heard. That's not exactly what these say on the screen. You're not worthy of being here. You didn't get here on merit, and it's always been, um, black women have really had to come with it. Like you can't be the first one, and if you are, you can't be the first one that failed. I mean, there's just so much um, that has gone along with that. Melania, I laugh because Melania is. Thank you for putting comments in the chat. It seems like you have seen our. I don't know if Tahisha shared our screens with you at all or not, or some of the things that we're going to talk about. But it really aligns with the rest of what I'm seeing on the internet. Here's two that jump out on me. The one is, just because you make a token DEI hire doesn't mean everyone does. Um, Love that one. Now, what didn't I might catch some smoke on this one. What I didn't like about the actual post,
how are
uh,
you going to get in trouble?
it's fine, is that they had a picture of Herschel Walker um, in the post, right? As to say that that is the token DEI hire. I get it, but at that point, like, we don't need to attack each other. It seems that something
Mm.
that's what we do. We can talk about colorism and things like that later, but I think both of us can talk about our experiences with that. But we really don't need to attack. But going back to Leah, Leah's always somebody I'm like, oh man, what does Leah say? Because Leah is the head of the Institute for Diversity Certification. And it's a really interesting point. So I suppose it's meant to be offensive to call a person a DEI hire, but what does it say about an organization's employment processes if a DEI hire is highly educated and skilled, and that's the person that you want to get rid of? Kind of back to earlier what you said, it doesn't really make much sense to do that. But this is where I start to where my anger, let's put all the DEI shit aside right now. I said I wasn't going to swear too much, but let's put all the DEI shit aside for a second. It has nothing to do with. We can argue all day long, especially to each other, and I think that's often what we do when we get into these situations where something happens in the news. Our algorithms are such is that we talk to each other and we start telling things that we already know. But we are highly qualified. They're highly qualified. What about this? What about that? Has nothing to do with it. The reason why I'm pissed off is it's a dog whistle. It is a straight up racist dog whistle. You may as well. It's the new N word for Fox News. Dang, didn't mean to say it. It's the new. I didn't mean to brand anyone.
But it's meant to be distracting, right? So if we're focused on this, they called her a DEI hire, they call you a DEI hire, you're distracted by that. And instead of addressing the issue, which as Leah points out, why would we not want a highly qualified person to be holding whatever position that is? Why are we focusing on how maybe they got there, maybe they didn't get there, right? So we will not know whether it was DEI or something else, affirmative action, DEI, the interview, whatever, but it's the assumption of that. And then that is used to distract you from the real conversation that needs to happen, which is, why are we so focused on the external, the gender, the fact that she is Black or Black identifying, right? So why are we so focused on that versus let's dive deep into, well, is this person actually qualified? And then when you see the receipts, you go, hey, yeah, they are qualified. But why do we then need that, right? Like, why are we diving into her background when, the qualifications of other people aren't as dived in as deeply? Like, I show up someplace and everybody wants to know, like, well, why am I qualified to talk about anything? Whereas perhaps if someone of a different physical background shows up and there's less questions to that person. I think that's the upset and that's the distractor.
See, this is why it's fun talking to you. This is where we disagree. I think going back to we all had different worldviews, and you even look at how we responded to what DEI hire means. Somebody using that phrase. I'm going back to people that are using that phrase are using it for different reasons. Like we saw some DEI professionals, right, saying like, no, this is wonderful, embrace it, it's awesome. You have others like yourself that are saying like, oh, this is meant as a distraction just to kind of catch us off guard. I'm calling it for the people that I used in the clip, right? So for the people that are in that video or the audio snippets of that clip, it is straight up racist. And I'm tired, like it's exhausting. Usually I can sit back. I'm a health equity guy, right? So I go to health equity and public health because we can actually work on things related to equity, different groups. It doesn't matter where you're from, rural America, urban America, whatever it is. Like we dig in and we try to fix it. The gentleman from Tennessee, and what did they say? The gentlewoman or the gentle lady from Wyoming? It was just straight up racist. They're dog whistles. And that's where I don't, the reason why I wanted to bring this up and the reason why I want to say it out loud in public on places like LinkedIn is that one, it's full of decision makers, right? You should know in this debate in your organization, if it comes up, if you decide to spread and share this terminology, it doesn't matter what you think you're saying. Somebody else is going to hear it as a dog whistle and say, oh, yeah, it's okay for me to be racist. I'm not going to out a former organization that I was with, but it was very frustrating when Black female employees would come to me and talk about being, we're in Zoom meetings, right? Like they're in Zoom meetings. And at the end of the meeting, the mugs come up with a couple winks about, don't tread on me. Like there's so many of them out there that we hide behind. You don't want to know the truth. We're just speaking the truth and facts or patriotism. And let me bring out my patriotic mug to see, what kind of America Kool-Aid you're drinking today. I'm a true patriot, right? So I'm not anti-American and all that. I'm just saying this is
So
I'm mad because
Harry,
it's racist.
you got me biting at the bit now. And this is the issue, right? So these words that we use like patriot, DEI, they're being kind of taken to mean a certain group of people. So if I'm supportive of DEI,
A
I'm
certain
some
group.
left, woke, and woke isn't even a bad word, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I want to be woke. But that I'm so far to the left that, or I'm so separate or different that nothing I say can be of value. And I think the same has happened with some of the words that we associate with the opposite side, right? And I hate to say left and right, but with the right, where patriot is bad word, right? So, and I think there are some other issues why patriot might be a not great term, but it's just distractors from actually looking at, well, if we're really going to work towards equitable practices of hiring, what do we need to do that? What do we need to talk about? How do we need to get the word out in a way that it isn't just, sound bites, or isn't really being incorporated and not being performative in nature? So, what does it look like to actually have equitable hiring practices that do incorporate some of the theories and discussions around diversity and inclusion? And I'm not going to say belonging here because we did not start this conversation out to say DEIB or DEIBJ or DEIBAJ. So we strictly talked DEI.
I don't even know that we started it to talk about DEI.
No,
I think we
well,
just
when you
kind of
say
ended up in that
DEI
rabbit hole.
hire,
Yeah, well, all
I'm
right. Yeah, fair
gonna,
enough. Fair enough.
I'm,
Fair enough. Fair enough. So,
which is why, and I will
look,
say, I have, when DEI started to be a bad word, I said to you, or a bad phrase, like you didn't want to be associated with DEI. I said, I'm not going away from it because as long as there are quality and assurance officers at organizations, I will still push for someone doing the DEI role,
how
because
dare
when
you
that
misquote me?
quality Q&A role goes away, then I will say yes, let's do it. No more DEI, right?
How
I see it as one more check in organization, or a check in organizations, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with what we need to do. Because the truth is, if you work for a company, you will devote more of your awake time at that organization than with your family. And that's the truth. So I want to be someplace, and I want to work someplace where I can feel comfortable that there are checks and balances in place, assuring that I am safe. And I see DEI as one of those.
you crack me up? How dare you
I
misquote me?
crack everybody up.
How dare you misquote me? Um, just to clarify what the conversation was about, I lean into health equity and less in saying that I do DEI work. They are not the same. They have some crossover. My opinion is that DEI is advanced leadership skills, and if you have a DEI program in your organization, there's something jacked up with your CEOs. Like you weren't doing something that you should already know how to do. I learned about diversity through my public administration degree. Like we were talking about it. I don't want to age myself, but it had to do with things like, why the space shuttle blew up. Not having certain people in the room, excluding people because they all have to be the same way. If you get down to the fundamentals of what the fundamental messages within it has to do with things like diversity of thought, inclusion. You can't have everybody exactly the same like you, or something's gonna break. Like your IT
And
during
that's
your
why,
thing will break.
even though you say, I
Let's
love how
let's
you
let's
threw in
keep
our
let's
tech.
keep going.
But I love how you threw that. So I'm going to push back a little bit there, because I do feel like it is not just an advanced leadership skill. Because if you want to promote for people from within your organization, you need to
Mm.
start uh, and growing your leaders. So if DEI is important, and I'm using this as the umbrella term to encompass the things that you talked about, if we really feel like that is important, then we need to have that flow through top to bottom, bottom to top, and people understand what that means, and not the derivatives of it, not the sound bites of it. Like, understand what it means to have an equitable practice, and it's not necessarily the images of like people standing up on boxes and being,
Mm,
it's
mm.
what does that look like at your organization? Because equity practice at every different organization is going to look slightly different. It's being ready in the DEI space to talk about these things and educate people in ways where we flex we meet them where they need to be met education wise. I don't believe that everyone has because you talk algorithm all the time with me, right? I don't believe that everybody is seeing the same algorithms. If I'm not seeing the same information, then I'm entering the space in a at a different education level. And I can only speak to this because of my parents. My parents on Facebook see a totally different algorithm than I do, right? Like, so like my sister-in-law and I, we're on the same algorithm. I know because she sends me the same stuff. My mom is sending me kittens. Like, and I'm sending, different things to my sister-in-law. So we can't assume that everyone is entering this in the same level. And this also has to do with where you are, rurally, in a city. All of these different factors come into place. As Leah would say, your worldview, your perception. So, push back there. I do think it's needed. I don't think that your CEO or your company is necessarily doing something awful, but I think that they are sometimes being performative in their DEI.
I should have said, and we're going to move off of this DEI
We are, because I'm
conversation.
fired.
You are, but you made this into the issue about Kamala Harris and being called a DEI hire has nothing to do with what happens at any of our former employers related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It trickles down because the words matter, the rhetoric matters, things like that. But like if you look at the screen right now, so when I said like I got heated, this one kind of jumped out at me. DEI hire. I was this years old the first time I was called the N word, right? That resonated with me because it reminded me of Little League baseball games. We were the only integrated team growing up. This is in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, right? People shooting fireworks off at us. Um, saying things like "go back to the watermelon patch" and stuff like that. So I am keyed in on these dog whistle racist comments, not so much about is diversity, equity, inclusion important. It is. It is because I went and got the certifications. We talk about it all the time. I just don't think that's what this conversation is really about. And I think that's where the distraction comes in because we need to be worried about this is me, right? We need to be worried about this racist whistleblowing and how it's permeated. Again, I don't want to say politics. But you mentioned Patriots
Yeah.
only. It is interesting, like things like with the flag and stuff like that. Like, I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to get an American flag." I'm like, "Oh man, cool." We're talking about flagpoles, and he's like, "Yeah, my wife doesn't want me to get one." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because she thinks I'm one of them. And so it's interesting.
Well,
I want my flag back.
and when you said you were going to show up the flag, what did I say to you?
Yeah, right. It's kind of something similar. We're gonna see who shows up on this one. Let's keep moving because we're
I asked
going a
Harry
little
if he
bit
was going to show the rainbow flag. I said,
right.
he said, I'm throwing up the flag. And I said, which flag? My flag? Rainbow flag?
I'm trying to keep with some graphics here, some marketing pieces. Okay, I'm gonna show another video. Give me a second. Here's what I figured out. I have to mute you to stop you coming back into my system, which I should just mute you when I don't like what you're saying, but I'm kidding. So just give me a second to get this right. Hold on, and we're gonna play a recent video that you sent me this morning. I'm gonna laugh. People might get mad at me as I laugh at this. I'll have to explain it in a minute, but the rhetoric did not stop with DEI hire. What? Go ahead. I didn't mute you yet.
And I was just going to say, I don't know which one you're playing because I was on in my fields this morning, but
Well, you'll find
yeah,
out.
I will find out because it's Friday, right?
Yeah. So hold on.
says, do you want to fund ICE? Where do you stand on Medicare for all? Why didn't you show up? The most recent decision, already you got a question. She will not show up for the Prime Minister's joint session of Congress today. She'd rather address in the summer a sorority, a college sorority, like she can't get out of that. So that's her decision, and that's her decision.
Okay, you're back.
Yay!
Could you hear the audio? I hope, or was I just playing?
I
just
did. I
like
can
for
hear the
fun?
audio. I couldn't hear you talking for a second. So
Colored makes me
yeah.
giggle. I shouldn't. I should get really mad. But
I'm just gonna say
it's so
there's
old school
right, like
pretending
when
not to be racist. It's so
it
old school.
it is, but I'm just gonna say that at this point, it seems like many things have been very triggering, and it's hard not to get angry, right? I said when you said, "How are you entering?" or "How am I feeling?" I'm feeling traumatized, but hopeful. Hopeful because I think that we can have deeper discussions now because as things bubble up and things are revealed, we get to have deeper discussions. But I do feel traumatized because I feel like we're going back into the past with some of the language. And I feel like it almost speaks to we haven't really come as far as we thought we had. Um, it makes me think of the trauma of okay, Barbie was the biggest selling movie. It was about female empowerment, and we're still talking about why she can't go speak to a sorority, a college sorority. She's a woman. She's all of these things, right? It speaks against that. Where I thought had come so far. Or is this the backlash, the push, right, before the true blossoming of spirit and awareness? And that's why I'm hopeful because I always felt like before my kids really learned something, they were very aggressively against it. And then when they realized, aha, this is, something I should be doing or I should be learning or doing or embodying, then they took it on like a passion. And I hope we are about to just like blossom like a flower in the United States with our awareness of the things we have been doing to those who have been marginalized.
I think at a minimum, it's creating action in certain places. It's creating a dialogue. We have a different look at hope. I think your hope, and it's always been this way, and this is one of the reasons why I really like to talk to you. It's a nice balance for me. Your hope is always that we all come together and we see the love in one another, and this is how life is supposed to be. Can't everyone else see it that way? I'm a bit more I don't know if pragmatic's the right word, maybe cynical often. And it comes from the public administration part, right? There's a set of rules that are out there. Um, we will not end racism tomorrow. We will not end sexism tomorrow. Any of the isms tomorrow. And I feel the best that we can do, not the best, right? But one approach is we need to navigate that shit right now. And you need to know the rules and you need to know how to navigate it. And I think that comments like that we're hearing right now with DEI hire and colored and things like that are motivating a certain group of people. But I want to talk specifically again about Kamala Harris. Again, why I get angry at some of the rhetoric. Now they talk about a colored, first off, it still makes me laugh. I know that um, there's often confusion about what to call black people, right? Is it black people, African Americans? I'm gonna acknowledge that and
Well,
say, okay, I
and I
get it.
think
But
there's a
that,
little bit something more here. I think they're also trying to alienate her from her Black roots because there is some discussion in other groups that goes on. Well, she's not really Black.
yeah.
Yes, she's mixed. And
So
so, as a mixed person who I do identify as Black, because when I show up places, no one's like, oh, look, she's
Yeah,
Jewish.
there
Like
you.
that doesn't jump out first, right? So what and I'm doing the scale of like where am I going to be discriminated the most, right? What where have I been sitting for 100% of my life as a black little girl, right? So that's how people see me. And unless they dive deeper into that, that's what they see. That's what I'm presented with from the isms,
I'm
first off.
gonna I'm gonna give you the as
So
so this
I
is an
will
inside
say
joke
that
with me
there's
and my friends.
two things going on with this comment to
Yeah.
her.
No,
They want to
I had not
pull her out of that too.
considered. There's a joke about. That's something to think about. It's an inside joke. There's two people on here that are going to get that joke, but the idea of them trying to transition to the word colored is because they don't know, or they want to muck up the waters about who she really is. For me, every time that word has come up, it has been someone that has struggled not to say the most offensive thing that they wanted to come out of their mouth. And that's what they heard their granddad say one day because that's what was popular and, at the time. So they come out and say something like colored. But that is that is not what I want to key in on. He's talking about this colored sorority. He did say, okay, no, wait. Now you want to talk about the sorority, though. The colored sorority. That's a whole different thing. Who he's talking about is
Oh
the Alpha
yes.
Kappa Alpha sorority, the oldest black sorority in the US. I am the son of Alpha Kappa Alpha, meaning my mother was in the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I am the brother. My sister was in the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. My brother is an Alpha Phi Alpha. My father was an Alpha Phi Alpha, right? I'm not. Um, but when you start attacking those institutions again, you can't belong here. All right, that's fine. We are badass amongst ourselves, so we're going to start our own brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever. So it's those kind of digs, um, constant poking of the bear. They know what they're saying, and even like if you and I don't want to overanalyze the clip, and I'm gonna get off of this quick because my energy level is a little bit high on it. But it's like the idea. It's like, well, they weren't important. What I thought was important. You should have been there. No mention to say that she had her own meeting with Netanyahu. Again, now we're getting into politics. Like she had her own meeting, but here's where we're going to stop. I'm telling you why I'm pissed off, why I thought it was important to talk about it. I think there's some racist dog whistles. I also think it's important from, if we want to go DEI perspective, what that means in your organizations or the work that you do, right? And also, I think it's an important conversation with how you identify, in that scope of things. But I did promise you, because you are the hopeful one, that I would give you the last, the last piece on. Give me the hopeful message. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm hopeful, and you mentioned it a little bit, is it's creating a more open dialogue. And we're talking about these things. And I do think it is very hard to extract politics from workplaces. And we know that politics and workplaces are supposed to be separate. And but this is going to be impacting us in the United States and globally from now until the election and even after that. And so I am hopeful that we will lean less into what divides us when we hear DEI to what we can kind of focus on, which is what do we need to do as DEI professionals and practitioners? How can we be better enabled to talk about the word DEI in a meaningful way? How can we define this so that we can move forward and it isn't this dog whistle of racism? Or how do we combat that? Because as you said, it's the constant poking, it's the constant kind of feeling of having to defend yourself that makes you feel unhealthy. And to organizations, I will say the following, you know, um, people of color, Black people, women, LGBTQ plus people, anyone sitting in a marginalized space, we are feeling just this sense of overwhelmment, frustration, constant having to defend yourself. So give us some grace, give us some love. I know, that sounds like, oh, you want special benefits or whatever, but it isn't. If someone were being attacked, if constantly and chronically or in chronic pain, you would have some compassion and empathy for them. And so that's all I'm asking. And then finally, I will say this. Um, when we think about race and who has benefited the most from thinking about racial practices, right? Truly, it has been white men. Because when you think about white men and action around who do you want to hire race wise, they have been historically the person that was hired because of the look and the feel and the whatever of their skin, right? So um, I think you have to have some acknowledgement that race has always been a factor in hiring practices too. So, to not acknowledge that would be a falsehood. And I just want us to just have some compassion for each other. We all have to work together. We all have to survive in this world that seems to be a dumpster fire sometimes. So let's just have some grace,
You
especially
were
on a Friday, right?
you
Going
were
into the
so feel
weekend.
the love. You were
Feel
so
the
feel the love.
love.
No,
Feel the love.
I think I lied a
I don't
little
know if my
bit, and
kids
it's
would
only
say
because
that,
I didn't
but
show my shirt. So I'm gonna go back to I get where you're coming from. DEI professionals coming together, feel the love. I'm going right back to the racist dog whistles, which is the thing that I wanted to talk about. My message. I got this shirt. Where is it? Yeah, there we go. Stop Project 2025. Race is involved in politics. I'm not saying that the wannabe POTUS wrote this, but a lot of people on the team did. If you don't know about Project 2025, you should check it
Harry
out.
wants to, you want to get into a completely longer
Another
talk.
day. I just want
And
to
we've
stop
already been
stop
here
the
an
crap.
hour. I thought you were
I'm
going to
leaving.
play the funk on me.
I'm gonna play the funk on you, but we found out I have to mute you in order to play the funk. So I appreciate everybody joining. Our contact, how you can contact us, is going to be here. We'll have some QR codes. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you are watching us on LinkedIn, that's really easy. Tahisha, thank you
Thank
for
you,
fuck around
Harry.
and find out Friday. Oh, I dropped it. I said it.
Oof.
But we'll have to do it again. And thank you so much for joining. I'll talk to you again
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you.